Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Sorry, I've just got out of the shower. I'm very, very red. And obviously the Extractor fans are still going. I am dog sitting, like I said. But we are continuing Totally Not Mark's One Piece reviews. We are on part 3 of 3 of the Whole Cake Island, and we're checking out the Reverie Arc. I'm excited to see what he has to say on the Reverie Arc. Not too sure what he has left to say on Whole Cake Island. But we'll well see, shall we?
Alright, so I sort of screwed up. For those of you out there that saw last week's video and took a cursory glance at the comment section, you may have noticed...
Oh, really? Whoa.
Yeah,
what?
Not great. And to be honest,
Why?
I totally see where a lot of you guys were coming from. Others,
I don't remember
not so
what
much. Like, I mean,
was
some of
so...
you got really angry. One person even said that I was scummy and cowardly for featuring my new
the comment
puppy
section
in what
is
he called
just
a lower
something
quality
else.
video. Now, most of the comments were, of course, great, critical, and very fair, but to those few mean people, quit harshing my chill bro.
Bro.
With that said, admittedly, last week was, for me, abnormally chaotic, and so this week, on top of giving you my first impressions of the crazy Reverie Arc, I want to, before I get into that, take all the criticisms you provided me in the last video and give you all what should have been already part of
right, so that's what this video is
think
about.
of this as part 3 to Whole Cake Island, while also discussing Reverie in depth.
Cool.
If only there was another way we could fix that cake.
Yeah, Sanji.
Big Mom's flashback. Personally, I thought this was my biggest misstep in last week's video, and to be honest, I'm delighted I took another closer look at it this week. While I neglected to mention a host of other aspects with the rest of the story, with this one, I think I misrepresented it greatly. Last week, coupled with my normal workload, I had to look after a new puppy and sort out moving.
Right, so this is the problem with Mark, isn't it? He releases a video every week. So trying to do this every week must be something else. Like.
Thankfully, however, Reverie, while being massively entertaining and interesting, thanks to its relatively short length, it allowed me time to reread this part of the story,
it was a short arc, wasn't it?
Material, and today I want to discuss what my impressions were.
So many questions at the end of that. Oh my god.
I understand that this story isn't designed to foster sympathy, but something I want to make clear is that I don't think that that is the sole purpose of a flashback either. I've never thought that. In the case of Big Mom, her flashback provided greater unseen context for the character she became and the circumstances she fell into. This doesn't necessarily garner sympathy, but it does garner empathy. It's easy to see how and why she became the way that she currently is.
Yeah.
Empathy instead of sympathy, and that's an important distinction.
Yeah, we understand the character,
covers the pages of this arc is the theme of family and what that means for each driving force in this story. With Big Mom's pirates, it's sort of forced diversity, ensuring and allowing everyone to be part of the group, but only those she accepts, is interested in, or finds value with.
Yeah, like she probably dictates everything, doesn't she?
On order, with it basically boiling down to family members that are literally engineered to be placed in a hierarchical structure, with their sole purpose being to serve the father figure. And lastly, the Straw Hat crew, with possibly the healthiest approach to helping out and supporting each other
definitely the healthiest
approach. Already, this is far more interesting and complex than I initially drew attention to, so let's look at Big Mom's dynamic a little closer. As I alluded to earlier, the point of the flashback wasn't necessarily sympathy, but to instead demonstrate how and why she became the way that she is. Having been born with an unnatural level of strength, reprimanding her became
she has the power of the Emperor, wasn't it?
This led to her becoming isolated and lonely, thus creating a longing in her for a family unit. However, when she does eventually find people that take her in, no one is able to teach her how to behave due to her tantrums and enormous power. That's where the character of Mother Caramel comes in. Initially looking as though she takes the reins of the young Big Mom,
she's actually devious, isn't she? Yeah.
Reinforcing this notion that everything she does is okay and that her heart is in the right place. Despite the destruction she may have wrought on a town or the hurt she may cause unwittingly or in some cases wittingly. This proved to be incredibly dangerous for Big Mom as it reinforced the notion that her motives are just and that she can do no wrong, despite her in essence being a selfish child that has now grown up physically but not mentally, still retaining the same awful toxic mentality she had when she was a child, with still no one able to take her to task for it. And this
no one can teach her the otherwise,
or perhaps appropriately, depending on your point of view, in her own children feeling more distant from her. Throughout the duration of the story, we are greeted by the harsh and unkind behaviors from her children, as they attack all of those who oppose them, lie to avoid confrontation with their own mother, and as is made evident
they are so scared of Big Mom.
In just a moment, demonstrates a need for a strong, reliable father figure within the family itself.
Someone else needs to look after the family.
In addition to illuminating for us the desire for her to have a family, it also highlights the origins of her defective approach to parenthood and her skewed
she has
views
no
of the
idea,
world,
does she?
resulting in children that are terrified to tell her the truth, many that want to distance themselves from her, and many that have behavioral issues that have stemmed from her unkind and warped vision of how she ought to carry out her duties as a mother. The Sulong form. I thought this was cool. But something I think is important for me to reiterate at this point is that my jam is clever writing, and it sort of ends there.
But this is a shonen, you have to appreciate the epic, cool moments as well.
Stuff like Robin not wanting to go underneath the revolutionary deck at the time skip, Sabo being foreshadowed with the sake cups way before he made his return, the consistency in Luffy's dialogue, those are my Super Saiyan moments.
Okay.
That's not to say that I don't appreciate
Mate, she was absolutely sick when she wrecked those ships, man.
Like that time Luffy did the champion walk
on Fisherman Island taking the wheels.
That was amazing. Amazing for me, however, because I knew beforehand that Luffy has been trained to hone this ability prior,
yeah, he's been building up to it.
Manifesting in action. It was a payoff. However, that doesn't mean that I like all of these techniques just because they are cool techniques.
Yeah, but it's cool.
For instance, way back on Drum Island, Chopper introduced us to the Rumble Ball mechanic out of nowhere at the end of the arc.
Yeah.
There was never a precedent established for such a devil fruit to be enhanced by various substances, and thus I treated it like exposition rather than a reveal or a surprise to enjoy.
That's
but that doesn't mean I didn't see the utility or visual flair from the move, it just meant I didn't appreciate it as a reveal or a surprise. Which is what I love about One Piece personally. When it comes to the Sulong form introduced to us by Carrot, I thought it looked really awesome, and I thought it offered, much like Chopper's monster ability, a nice ace in the hole once the right conditions were met for Carrot. I like how it also encouraged the crew to get involved in order to protect her while she's in that state. The same is true for when Peckhams takes off his glasses and transforms himself into his Sulong form to help them escape. I wasn't super attached to Peckhams personally, but strangely, I'll admit, I probably had more reason to be close to him than I did Pedro. However, maybe because his character was more interesting, or
perhaps he had introduced us earlier, wasn't he? Like, it's not like
Pedro's sacrifice hit me much more intensely than Peckhams did. Regardless, there are plenty of things mechanically and visually to love about the Sulong form, and I'm interested to see what it offers up in the future for her and the rest of the crew. In essence, it was a nice piece of exposition. Katakuri versus Luffy. I think the worst part about this section within my last video is that while I sort of got what Oda was going for, I didn't fully expand upon it or appreciate it, and instead focus on the set pieces of the battle as well as the beats that affected me the most while I was reading. So, let's take a deeper look and talk about Katakuri versus Luffy.
Because there's more to it. Like, I've reacted to Mukataku's video on it, and it's just like,
I'll also mention Snake Man. As I mentioned in my last video, Katakuri isn't an evil character, and for the most part is vastly more emotionally mature than most of, if not all of his siblings. So much so, he effectively acts as the father figure for his family.
Yes, he does. He's the go-to. He's the one they respect and look up to.
Practically every single scene Katakuri takes a partial or leading role in. He is always relaxed and is willing to either take the appropriate action or throw himself into harm's way.
It's because I suppose he feels confident because he's just seen 5 seconds ahead.
Big Mom's fear of future
you would have slightly more confidence in what you're doing if you're already seeing what's happening.
Oftentimes. And yet it's this ability to remain relaxed is what fuels Katakuri's ability to see short steps into the future. It's quite literally his greatest strength.
Yeah.
Despite knowing when something bad is about to happen, either at the wedding or during the early stages of the fight, he demonstrates an ability that Big Mom never has been able to show. The ability to take bad news in his stride and to plan accordingly. This is why we see numerous instances where he is spoken of in exceptionally high regard amongst his siblings. He is the best parental figure they have. He is who they go to if they have an issue. He is the one that keeps the level head when Big Mom is lashing out.
Yeah, they picked on him when he was younger and blah, blah, blah.
The biggest threat to his family when Straw Hat Luffy comes to town. I think perhaps, however, the most tragic part of Katakuri in this fight with Luffy is how his fickle relationship with his family is laid bare. Despite being the father figure or older brother to the rest of his family, he's acutely aware that if he relaxes and projects who he really is onto them, i.e. letting down his perfect tough guy persona,
yeah, that's why he hides when he's eating and that, like, and he's never been on his back before. But they knew, and I thought that was cute.
Make an example of. Both armed with very similar powers of stretch, they too have one fundamental difference. Rubber, by its very nature, can absorb damage and return to normal shape automatically, but Mochi leaves an imprint, showing that he has taken damage and therefore isn't perfect. Throughout Luffy's journey, he has failed dozens of times, but every single time he could rely on the support and love of his family unit, the Straw Hat crew, to lift him up and to help him where he needs it. If at any point Katakuri shows weakness or a sign that he isn't all that, then he has every reason to believe that his family unit won't care for or respect him afterwards.
Want him
Because
around.
they've all been raised to value and respect the wrong things in people. This is exactly something that Luffy recognizes during the battle, and in an act of kindness puts those ridiculing him to sleep using his haki. This also demonstrates a dual function. Obviously that Luffy empathizes with Katakuri in this instance, but also that those who would ridicule him are weak-minded, and therefore subject to falling asleep from his haki power. And throughout this fight, we see Katakuri come to accept who he is and fight the way he wants to fight. Overall, I find Katakuri
he hurts himself to be on the same level as Luffy when he gets a hit from his sister.
Under the explored themes within this arc.
That looks cool.
To be honest, the choice to explore the theme of family within the context of a pirate story concerning its crews is not only interesting, but as I discovered, is also extremely versatile and appropriate for the topic, enabling its author to examine and explore dozens of different interesting family dynamics, and not to mention traumas using the various crews as proxies for real families. I mean, it's hardly even a proxy, really. The Straw Hat crew is as much a family as my own is.
Definitely, yeah.
Snake Man. Something I was sort of surprised a lot of people desperately wanted my take on was the Snake Man from Luffy's showdown with Katakuri at the end of the fight. And while I understand that it's sort of a culmination of Gears mixing with his exploration into Color of Observation Hockey, narratively it didn't set my world on fire,
it looks
and visually
awesome.
it did nothing for me personally.
Really?
Now, that's not to say I didn't like it at all.
Visually it looks freaking boss.
I liked how it played into the dynamic of the fight and all of that, but outside of it I thought it was pretty lackluster. That is until I saw the anime's version. Oh my Goda! After watching the corresponding episodes in animation, these fights really are on another level. And it's one of the first times I've seen an anime snippet that I vastly prefer over the manga.
Wow,
this is a situation where, of course, action is going to be better in animation
not
than
necessarily.
in the manga. That's not the case at all. I much prefer Dragon Ball's action in the manga than I do in the anime. But with this specific scene in One Piece, it is out of this freaking world. Personally, when I received all those messages about my not mentioning Snake Man, I was like, okay, I kind of get it, but it wasn't that good. Then I saw this, and it all made sense.
That's why everyone's like, oh my god. I'm sure
there are plenty out there that love the manga's version. It just didn't really set my world on fire as all. It's much more impressive in the anime, I think.
Fair enough.
There was a ton going on in this arc, and I really enjoyed it. Within this arc, Oda has demonstrated a level of writing that I think is significant and perhaps setting a new standard for himself within the series. Naturally, you'd expect to see a certain level of depth with the primary characters like Sanji, Big Mom, or Luffy, but within this story, despite contributing comparatively less than those three, others have still been explored and fully realized far beyond what was
Nami
even
really
necessary
stepped
to
up in this
sell
arc.
the main story in the first place. Characters like Katakuri, obviously, but even Jinbei, whom on top of being established of having promised Luffy to join his crew way back in the story, is given ample opportunity to develop and to express himself as we learn about his allegiance to Big Mom and his journey in finding freedom within this story, coming to a beautiful climax where he must yet again postpone what he has gone through hell and back to get, his place within the crew of the Straw Hat Pirates, in order to buy them enough time to escape. It's really a wonderful little self-contained story with a great payoff, and it's really something I thoroughly enjoyed.
I think he's so cool. He's so freaking class.
I think it's time for me to discuss the main topic of today's video.
Reverie.
Over the last week, I've been reading this arc quite a bit, and today I want to give you all my first impressions of, thoughts on, and review for the turbulent, the wild, and the crazy Reverie Arc. Reverie, upon my first read-through, struck me as rather strange and mysterious.
There's so many questions, man.
Section, chapter by chapter. Chapter 903. 903, despite being the first of the Reverie Arc, is a reflection on the prior Whole Cake material instead. I thought it was rather neat that Sanji was given a higher bounty than Zoro now, something he can talk about with him later. I mean, it totally makes sense given what he's done, plus his association with Germa 66. Additionally, I thought it was a great narrative decision to give Sanji a symbol of his family to follow him around, this suit his family made for him. While he doesn't want to wear it, you absolutely know he's going to in the future if his relationship with his family improves on, or if the circumstances require him to give up his pride. Regardless, he'd be wearing that suit
when he finds out what it can do as well. Yeah, Nami calls
the inclusion of Kobe.
Kobe is sick whenever we see him now.
And every time we see him, he again has grown exponentially, and right now has developed his hockey to an impressive level. Not to even make mention of his physical ability, demonstrating also that
he's
he
very capable, very capable.
Ability by swimming and easily protecting a royal ship on the way to the Reverie from attack.
Luffy's International Fan Club begins.
And finally, in this chapter, the gag or reveal surrounding Luffy's bounty number is a bit of a cheese in my opinion.
Initially,
towards the front of this chapter, it's announced that his bounty has fallen to 150 million berries, with a small panel demonstrating that reality as Luffy holds up the poster. Now, as the chapter progresses and we see the headlines coloring these exploits in a positive light, because of this, I began entertaining the idea that this lower bounty number could very well be a reward from the Navy, or might have been a strategy on behalf of the Navy. But it turns out it was neither of those things, and Luffy just can't understand big numbers because his real bounty number is 1.5 billion. I think this is sort of a cheat because the initial picture we see Luffy holding up at the beginning of the chapter doesn't have a comma behind the 1.
It could be underneath the... It could be. Oh, yeah. 5 now. Yeah. Oh.
Chapter 904. Not much really happens in this chapter. It's mainly for exposition, and with it just being 15 pages long, it's one of the shortest chapters I've yet come across in this series. Essentially, we're made aware that the revolutionaries are planning a war against the Celestial Dragons. Good idea, I guess.
Yes.
We get introduced to the military captains of the Revolutionary Army in Karasu, Lindbergh, Belobetti, and Morley. We also get to see them help a village rise up against pirate oppression while demonstrating for us their powers.
Oh my god.
I thought Belobetti's devil fruit power has the most potential for creative narrative input. Other than that, in chapter 904, I don't really have anything else to talk about.
Yes.
Chapter 905. In this chapter, we get to see the new Marineford headquarters,
while
also demonstrating that they are using the old Marineford as a G1 base. We also find out that Fujitora is in Marijoa. This is funny because Marijoa is an incredibly sacred place, and Fujitora has already been banned from returning to military grounds without Luffy reprimanded or captured to be brought to justice.
Well, it's Luffy and Law, isn't it?
Panel, but it highlights his personality brilliantly, I think.
Yeah, he has to bring both of them back,
logic to grant himself access to the most sacred area in all the world. While there, a rather interesting conversation happens where he cites that there's no longer any need for the 7 Warlords of the Sea
because he's trying to get rid of
something Vegapunk has created. And on the other end of this conversation is a brand new Navy Admiral in the shadows called Ryokugyo. With that said, the vast majority of activity in this chapter is spent introducing and reintroducing characters as they arrive to the Reverie, with an Honest Abe type character called King Hamburger and a Mexican type character called King Taco. And yes, I felt uncomfortable saying that. But the most notable arrivals have to be the representatives from the Ryoma Kingdom, Princess Shirahoshi, her brothers, and King Neptune, while being guided by Garp. Which is really cool to see him again, but more so, it's sort of lovely getting to see Shirahoshi's reaction to the surface world.
Yeah, she's not been there before. It's cool. And the whole Celestial Dragon thing as well, that was cool.
Stelly, the smarmy, reprehensible, adopted sibling of Sabo. We haven't seen this dude since the post-war arc, and now he's all grown up. Sort of. Chapter 906. We finally get to see Marijoa surrounded by its very own man-made forest, with stunning structures and slaves underground to add to the world building, helping the facility to work. Again, however, there are tons of reintroductions to older characters in this arc, like Wapol, Vivi, Rebecca,
I like
Dalton,
him as well. Like these guys, they were such small characters in the back. It's like awesome.
Who these characters are and what their connection was to Luffy in this story, which is sort of humorous to me. Not because I don't think these are justified to be here, but because I only read those stories a couple months ago and they are still very, very fresh in my mind.
It's class. It's very cool.
Whereas when these chapters were released, some of those stories were told over 15 years prior.
Oh my god, could you imagine?
Perhaps the most interesting part of this chapter, and what will be, I assume, one of the main talking points of this arc, is that weird big crowned shadow man with a massive straw hat in the cold. Literally no idea what this means or what is happening here exactly, but it's certainly interesting, and I will absolutely talk a bit more about what I think about it later on, because this won't be the last time we see him, her, or it in this arc. Alright, so, to be honest, up until this point, the Reverie Arc, with all that it's been built up to be, I wasn't super enthusiastic about what I had seen thus far. I mean, sure, some of it was interesting, but a lot of it was sort of
the intrigue, come on, man. It's like, wow, what's happening?
Shadow Man, meeting old characters again, seeing some heartwarming scenes were pretty much the things that were taking center stage, with the most noteworthy being Luffy's reputation starting to get to the level of an Emperor of the Sea. These are all cool for sure, but at this point in my read-through, with only 2 chapters left in the arc, I was really hoping there was going to be more. And thankfully, there was. Chapter 907. This chapter was probably the most enjoyable chapter so far for me, mostly because stuff happens here that has massive repercussions. The other chapters were great and all, but large portions of them were spent introducing or reintroducing characters, like the introduction to the revolutionary captains. That's great, but I can't do anything with that information right now. It's exposition. Same goes for the reintroductions of Stelly, Shirahoshi, Rebecca, Vivi.
I really feel like it's going to be really important future-wise.
I think the most important thing about the princess comes later, and I'm guessing it might have something to do with the fact her bloodline came from the 20 original founders, but decided to live amongst the people instead. Gonna put a pin on that for just a moment. The chapter itself kicks off with a bang with 2 Emperors of the Sea in Big Mom and Kaido attempting to form an alliance
talking to each other, because she's on the way to Wano.
Because it helps set up what I can assume will be the main plotline of the Wano arc. This is the first time someone in this arc has set their eyes on Luffy, so I guess that makes sense. Also, something that I thought was a blink and you'll miss it moment was Garp mentioning the big cheese before Roger. He refers to an era prior to Roger being that of Roxas. Whomever or whoever they are, they were involved in the event with Garp that led him to becoming a naval hero.
Oh.
And once that scene is done, we see it. The big chair.
Yeah, no one's allowed to sit on it because everyone's equal, but then
I feel like he'll be made an example of later on, perhaps after another expository dump like this one is. Because right now, he's a terrific vehicle to help the audience understand the significance of various things.
Yes.
He's tremendously eager to become a celestial dragon and inquires about the big chair.
Oh,
Essentially,
mate.
this chair is never to be sat on. It's there to act as a symbol that no one person may rule this world and thus helps retain peace and balance between the various kings and kingdoms that make up the world. But Stelly, he really wants to sit in that chair.
Yeah, he does.
Alright, now something that's set up in a chapter earlier was that a celestial dragon that we all know called Saint Carlos has made it known that he wishes to capture Princess Shirahoshi because he wants to. But what's interesting about this is that once he does, everyone is powerless to do anything about it.
This is a celestial dragon.
Boom! I really love this short but wonderful scene. This is the same celestial dragon Orihime Shirahoshi's mother saved way back in Fishman Island.
Amazing,
and
absolutely
much
amazing.
later in life, her actions have led the celestial dragon to becoming a better person, and now he has saved her daughter's life. And get this, he is one of the Don Quixote family. I like this for obvious reasons that include a long narrative thread being paid off and linked with others, but I like what it means for the future also. From the very beginning, these celestial dragons have been depicted as the garbage juice of people, and yet here we see some nuance and complexity, which I am always going to be a fan of, unless you're talking about panel structure.
Nice.
And to end a tremendously informative chapter, we get a scene with red-haired Shanks meeting with the five elders, with his only dialogue of note being,
I just want to talk about one specific pirate.
I need to talk to you about. I feel at this moment in time, Luffy is too obvious.
Yeah, I don't think it's that at all. Blackbeard. Probably Blackbeard.
They already know enough about the young pirate.
It's gotta be Blackbeard.
So I think he could very well be there to discuss either Blackbeard or perhaps less obviously Trafalgar Law, for reasons concerning his op-op fruit and the potential for creating an immortal life. But more on that a little later in chapter 908. Speaking of which, chapter 908. This is the chapter where something big goes down. But funnily enough, it's not the Reverie. In fact, we don't even get to see the Reverie. We just see everyone
talking about it, and then
the Reverie. And really, all that is nice with King Neptune finally coming around to realizing that there are good and bad land dwellers, much the same as there are good and bad fishmen. A lesson so many struggle with today, even. Within this chapter also is one of the driving inspirations behind the revolutionaries' planned attacks, the freedom of their friend, Bartholomew Kuma.
Damn it,
while
man.
no longer himself is being beaten and abused by the celestial dragons like few we've seen in the series. It's a big sad for sure.
Very, very sad.
And to be honest, I could talk about cute things like that all day, but to hell with all of that because the implications of this chapter's ending is something groundbreaking. And it involves the big chair. Alright, so we understand the hierarchy of the world government, right? We have the kings of the various countries and lands, we have the celestial dragons, and we have the five elders above that. During this arc, thanks to our favorite blonde boy Stelly, we understand that there was a throne to never be sat on, and effectively worked as the throne for the king of the world. This is when we hear chatter from the five elders, discussing how the Nefeltari family dynasty are traitors to their way after choosing to remain in the lower realm. This is Vivi's family. However, something more pressing is worrying them. With it only being 2 years removed from the Paramount War, and with the talks between Kaido and Big Mom evident for all to hear, they are worried that they cannot maintain the world's equilibrium forever, and that the time has come for a great cleansing. I have no idea what that means really, but I can speculate. However, before I do, this tall shadowy boy is the great Imu, or so he's called. Strewn across the floor are tattered images of Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shirahoshi, combination of wanted posters and regular photographs. They are all massively important individuals within the world, and one that's missing, I think to me, is Momo, with his power to communicate to the massive elephant of Zou, which makes sense as Wano is perhaps an unknown to the wider world. However, what's interesting is that in his hand is a photograph of Princess Vivi as he scales the steps towards the throne that no one is to be sat upon. The five elders then ask if another light is to be
doesn't exist within the past.
His face or her face we get is through this panel, and in it we see a very strange eye. Now, my immediate reaction I will get to, but first I would like to bring to your attention what my One Piece Secret Service has brought to my attention first. Firstly, what's interesting and immediately striking about this individual is his eye, obviously. So, where have we seen an eye like this before? Well, 2 places have been brought to my attention. Mihawk and the Great Elephant of Zoe. Somehow I don't think either of them are beneath that cloak, but what it might be indicative of is a deeper mastery of hockey, seeing as we already associate that sort of design choice with the eyes to be associated with hockey mastery in the first place. With that said, it's a tenuous guess, though I would be surprised if these 3 entities weren't tied together in some way, shape, or form. What's more is that the sword that was stuck into the ground by the photos, I am going to hazard a guess as to the significance of it. It's been said through conversations with Stelly that the weapons dotted around the throne were put there by the 20 that established the world government. 20 weapons. Now, I've gone back over the images of this throne, but I can't get a good view of the weapons put into the floor. But no image shows all 20 weapons. One thing for certain, though, is that I cannot see all 20. In addition, this emu guy is tied with the responsibility of the Void Century, which means that sword planted in the ground, which he was using, could very well be his own. With the tattered ruin, he's left Blackbeard and Luffy's posters in. It's clear he's been aware of them for quite some time and has been troubled by their exploits, made evident by their tattered remains. Shirahoshi, however, has more recently come to his attention and has also been recently stabbed since her utility has just become known. As I've said, Momo still isn't widely known yet, and furthermore, Vivi's in the perfect condition and in his possession.
You see, the whole thing with Momo though, at the time, it's like,
he could very well be a great ancestor
time travel stuff.
We do know the bloodline she represents is important, and it was mentioned at the end of that chapter yet again. However, that makes me feel like it's a misdirection and she might be required for a different reason. Additionally, something that was brought to my attention is that the Op fruit may have been used to prolong this emu individual's life. It's been explained to us already that the ultimate power of the Op fruit is to grant someone eternal life.
Well, to know that, it must have been done before.
So, I wouldn't be surprised if this is that man. But overall, I don't think we have the means with which to derive a conclusion just yet. Just a bunch of ill-refined theories, but it's interesting to say the least. Or at least I don't.
Lot of questions.
I mean, it could have something to do with why the Zoe elephant is walking forever, or where it's walking to. It's a mystery and bizarre to say the least, and that's not even to make mention of the poneglyphs and Rafto. On a narrative first impressions level, I do have my own thoughts on the utility of this reveal and how it conflicts with my expectations. From the outset, these are not complaints or disappointments, just my internal thoughts as I discovered this new entity. From about Alabasta until now, I sort of assumed the ultimate roadblock at the end of this journey for Luffy would not be a person, but a concept, an idea, a culture, or sociological structure.
A bit
usually
weird now
in the
that like
real
someone's
world,
popped
no
up.
one person is to blame for the world's issues.
Oh no. Well, it seems like I haven't got all of the video, but okay. But basically, Reverie's got a lot of questions. Oh, my leg was going numb anyway, I need to move. Yeah, Reverie's got a hell of a lot of questions that come up at the end. And then it just goes into the Wano arc. So, I have still only read enough to react to part 1 of his Wano arc reviews. I've got 94, volume 94 is finally on the way, so I don't know if that's going to cover it, but if not, if means be, I will have to read stuff on my phone. I hate it, but I will have to, because I've had to down earlier in the... I couldn't get volume 20, I do believe. So, yeah, I will have to just catch up, because I'm really enjoying doing one of these a week, whilst reading One Piece as well. It's quite fun. So, yeah, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, a link is in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month or less helps support the channel. It's greatly appreciated, and thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? If you guys think of this, click like, subscribe button, or leave comments down below. Let me know how to watch us in future videos, and I'll see you guys next time.